Good afternoon, everyone. Today we bring you a very interesting story. Let's listen. I woke up to the sound of my dog Max growling at the front door, which was unusual. Max, a laid-back golden retriever, typically only barked at squirrels or the mail carrier. Still half asleep, I stumbled out of bed, shuffled to the door, and opened it to see what had riled him up. That's when I spotted it, a violation notice taped to my mailbox like some kind of ominous warning. Rubbing my eyes, I thought it had to be a mistake. I didn't live in a neighborhood governed by a homeowners association. There was no HOA. Yet, the notice looked official. Thick paper, a fancy logo at the top reading Elmwood Community Preservation Society. Below that, in bold letters, was my supposed offense. Unauthorized shade of green on mailbox. Fine, $250. Pay within 7 days or face additional penalties. I stared at the notice, my groggy morning brain struggling to grasp the ridiculousness of it. Unauthorized shade of green? What did that even mean? My mailbox had been the same forest green since I moved in. Who got to decide what shades were authorized? Glancing around, I saw my neighbors' mailboxes, red, black, white, even a garish neon yellow that surely offended every standard of decency. But apparently, mine was the issue. Unbelievable, I muttered, crumpling the notice in my hand. I was about to toss it when I caught the fine print. For questions or disputes, visit the HOA office at 27 Oak Avenue. HOA office. We didn't have an HOA. I'd lived here for a decade. I was the damn mayor. If there'd been an HOA, I'd have known. Determined to unravel this absurdity, I threw on some clothes, grabbed my keys, and drove to the listed address. I pictured a proper office, maybe a small building with a receptionist. Instead, I found a shabby rental unit in a half-deserted strip mall, wedged between a vape store and a dry cleaner. The windows were shrouded in cheap blinds, and a lopsided sign on the door read, Elmwood HOA Enforcement Division. I pushed it open, and a wave of microwave burrito stench and stale coffee hit me. Inside, 3 men sat behind a flimsy plastic desk, all dressed in matching security uniforms that looked like they'd been ordered from a shady online retailer. One of them, a middle-aged guy with a scruffy beard and a gut straining his polyester shirt, looked up from his phone. "Can I help you?" he asked, scratching his jaw lazily. "Yeah," I said, holding up the crumpled notice. "I got this ticket on my mailbox. Pretty sure it's a mistake since we don't have an HOA." The guy snorted. "We do now. The Elmwood Community Preservation Society was officially formed last month." "Formed by who?" I pressed. He smirked. "By us." I blinked. "You can't just invent an HOA out of thin air and start fining people." "Sure we can," he replied. "We're here to protect property values and uphold community standards." I stared at him. "What's next? You gonna fine my dog for unauthorized tail wagging?" "Excessive enthusiasm can be a disturbance," he said, deadpan. I glanced at the other two. One was shoving pretzels into his mouth, the other tapping aimlessly on an unplugged laptop. It was painfully clear these guys were making it up as they went. "This is fraud," I said. The bearded guy leaned back, hands behind his head. "Call it what you want, pal, but we've already collected from half the neighborhood. Don't pay, and we'll add penalties. Then we'll escalate." "Escalate to what?" "Legal action." I laughed. "You think you can sue me over a mailbox color?" "If we have to," he said coolly. I shook my head. "Do you even know who I am?" He raised an eyebrow. "Some grumpy homeowner who hates rules." I pulled out my wallet, flipped it open, and slid my Elmwood Mayor ID across the desk. The room went quiet. I leaned in. "I'm not just a homeowner. I'm the mayor of this town." His smirk flickered, but he recovered quickly. "So what?" "So," I said, "you just tried to scam the mayor, and I don't take kindly to that." He forced a laugh. "Look, Mr. Mayor, this is about maintaining standards. Nothing personal." "Oh, it's personal now," I shot back. "And I promise you, this little scheme? It's done." I grabbed my notice and stormed out. Outside, I pulled out my phone and started making calls, first to my attorney, then to the local news, and finally to my secret weapon, Mrs. Clara Thompson. Clara was an 80-year-old firebrand who'd lived in Elmwood longer than anyone. She ran the neighborhood gossip network, knew everyone's secrets, and once chased off a tax assessor with a rolling pin when he questioned her shed's permits. If anyone could rally the troops, it was her. 10 minutes later, I was in her kitchen, sipping tea as she pounded away on her ancient desktop. "Those lowlifes find me for disruptive birdhouses," she growled. "I've had those birdhouses for 40 years. No two-bit con artist telling me otherwise." I nodded. "They're shaking down everyone. Most people probably pay because they don't know better." Her eyes sparkled. "Then we make sure they do." Within an hour, she blasted a mass email to the neighborhood, exposing the fake HOA. By morning, it was front-page news. "Fake HOA extorts residents. Mayor strikes back." I hoped that'd scare them off, but I should have known better. Con artists don't quit, they dig in. The next day, every house woke up to doubled fines and a new warning. Any attempt to undermine HOA authority will result in escalated enforcement. They weren't backing down. Neither was I. The following morning, I stepped onto my porch for coffee, only to find a bright red violation notice taped to my door. I ripped it off, my pulse racing as I read. "Unauthorized assembly of anti-HOA activities. Fine, $500. They were accusing me of rebellion, which, admittedly, was true, but they had no right to fine me for it. This wasn't just a scam anymore, it was a shakedown. I wasn't alone. Neighbors stood in their driveways, clutching similar notices. Clara waved hers like a war banner, shouting about aggressive porch decor. Tom, the local conspiracy buff, had set up a table with a whiteboard labeled HOA Conspiracy Timeline, complete with yarn connecting dots. Chaos reigned. The fake HOA had just united the entire neighborhood against them. I called an emergency meeting in my backyard. Clara took charge like a general, pacing with arms crossed. "These crooks are running a racket, and we've let it go on too long. How do we shut them down?" Lily, a sharp lawyer from down the street, adjusted her glasses. "Legally, they've got nothing. You can't just declare an HOA and enforce rules no one agreed to. But they're betting on ignorance." Tom tapped his whiteboard. "They're collecting real money. Where's it going?" I'd been wondering the same. If they were raking in fines, there'd be a trail, bank records, deposits, something to prove they were pocketing it. "We need evidence," I said. "If we catch them taking cash illegally, the police can step in." Clara cracked her knuckles. "Leave that to me." We hatched a sting operation. I'd go to their office, pretend to cave, and pay my fine in cash, hoping they'd take it off the books. Tom, with his arsenal of hidden cameras and recorders, normally reserved for government surveillance theories, would rig me up. Clara would monitor from outside. The next afternoon, I walked into their dingy strip mall office, envelope in hand. The trio, Mike, Jake, and Dave, lounged at their desk, oozing smugness. Mike, the bearded ringleader, twirled a pen. "Back so soon, Mr. Mayor." I kept my face neutral. "I don't want trouble. Just want this over." I slid the envelope across. $500, cash. Jake, the eager one, grabbed it before Mike could stop him. "See? Not so hard." I glanced around. No receipts, just a drawer stuffed with envelopes. "You get a lot of these?" I asked casually. Dave, the dimmest of the bunch, grinned. "Oh yeah, people pay and shut up. We're raking it in." Mike glared at him, but it was too late. I had them. I pulled out my phone, hit play, and their voices echoed back. "People pay and shut up. We're raking it in." Jake went pale. Mike shot up. "You son of a..." I stepped back. "Careful, Mike. I've got 3 cops outside ready to roll in." A bluff, but it froze them. "I'd start packing," I said, heading for the door. "This place is done by tomorrow." Outside, Clara threw her arms up. Boom. Nailed them. Tom was already emailing the audio to the neighborhood. By morning, the story blew up. News vans swarmed, and their office sat empty. But they weren't gone. The next day, my yard was plastered with hundreds of new notices, taped to trees, my car, even Max's collar. Unauthorized canine residency. Fines like possession of defiant attitude and failure to comply with HOA intimidation were scrawled in red ink. They weren't fleeing, they were fighting back. The neighborhood erupted. Photos of fresh notices flooded my phone, taped to garages, zip-tied to fences, one laminated inside a mailbox, a federal crime. Clara stormed over, waving a ticket for excessive yard charm. Tom handed me a list. "They've pulled this in 3 other towns. Set up, scam, vanish." Lily fumed. "We need to sue now. The evidence is airtight." I gritted my teeth. "They're finished. They just don't know it." I called a town meeting in the park. Within an hour, nearly everyone showed up, angrier than ever. As we planned, a black SUV rolled up. Mike, Jake, and Dave stepped out, clipboards in hand. Mike smirked. "We hear there's resistance, but we have full authority. Pay or face consequences." The crowd bristled. I stepped forward. "You're con artists with no authority." Jake scoffed. "You're just mad you broke the rules." I grinned, playing their confession video again. The crowd booed, waving tickets. Lily brandished legal papers. "This is your lawsuit, boys." Sirens wailed. The scammers panicked. Mike ran. Jake tripped. Dave tried climbing a tree. Neighbors tackled them as cops arrived, cuffing them amid laughter. An officer turned to me. "They've got warrants in 3 counties. As they were hauled off, Clara whispered something to Mike that drained his face of color. She dusted her hands and smiled. The fake HOA was toast. Over the next few days, residents gleefully tore down notices. Lily filed for restitution, ensuring refunds. I finally savored coffee on my porch, Max snoring beside me. Then my phone buzzed. A new notice. Unauthorized victory celebration. Fine, $500. I sighed. The fight wasn't over yet.